The Premier League season has come to an end, and we are now going to grade every Premier League club's season with an A, B, C, D, E or F, and maybe a plus or a minus thrown in there as well to give a little bit of more of a nuanced answer. We're going to do this in alphabetical order. Luke Moore, why don't you start us off with Arsenal?
OK, for Arsenal, everyone, we've given them a B. A B this season, which is a very good grade.
B for not bad.
I don't want to hear any complaints.
We'll get complaints, brother.
I know we will.
We will.
I think you've got to admire the consistency of what they've been able to achieve. Second place. But I think this season, particularly with Man City's implosion, and for them to come up again with nothing, I think you could argue that it's still falling a bit short based on their own ambitions and how they've positioned themselves. Look, did well in the Champions League, of course, come up against a good team, no shame in that. But second, again, feels a little bit frustrating, so we've gone for a B, and I think we both kind of agreed on that.
And I think as well in the Champions League, as you just mentioned there, it was a good run.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, beaten by a very good side who most people think are the best on the continent.
I mean, but you've got a position where you've knocked Real Madrid out the Champions League, but you've also lost a silly game or two at home. You know what I mean? So it's in the league. So it's kind of, it was there for them. They didn't grasp it, so it has to be a B. But it's still a very good season.
Decent season.
Marcus, next up, Aston Villa.
Aston Villa, C+.
Yeah.
It would have been a B had they have beaten Manchester United or even got a point against Manchester United on the final day. I understand they were robbed with that Morgan Rogers decision, which was the goal was disallowed, of course. But they are ultimately now in the Europa League rather than the Champions League. So a very good Champions League campaign.
Good news for Emery.
Excellent news. They had a great run in the Champions League, of course. They excited us in that game against PSG. Couldn't do it, but no shame in that. Semi-final of the Cup. So decent Cup runs, but no Cup win.
Yeah.
And again, finishing sixth in this season is no mean feat. But they want to see themselves as a Champions League club.
Yeah.
They were close to getting it. And had they have not lost to Manchester United, then they would have done it.
Fine, but there's some other games they should have won they didn't win as well.
Indeed.
And I think if you look at the fact that they spent massive on wages, they strengthened quite noticeably in January, and they still come up short on their own ambitions.
Yeah.
I think C+ is fair.
I do as well. All right, moving on. Bournemouth.
Yeah, we've given Bournemouth a B. I think you have to give them a B for equaling their best ever league finish in the top flight. I understand the season did promise more at some point. They tailed off quite badly.
First half was distinctly better than the second.
It was. They also, I mean, the thing about the team around the level of Bournemouth, and we'll come on to some more of the other teams that are around that level as well. Are we looking for them to replicate perhaps what some other teams have done in the Cups, right? Because Bournemouth, they're a mid-table team really, but they were nowhere in the League Cup. But they are enjoying one of the best periods in their history, and to equal their best ever league finishes is good. So a B is fair. I think if it got to a semi-final, dare I say even a final of a cup, or perhaps pushed up into those European places, that's when you'd give them an A.
Yeah.
But I think B is about right.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about them in Champions League for a little while, potentially. So
yeah,
they certainly excited their fans this season. So I think that's fair. Brentford, a B.
Yes. They are the Bs.
Well, indeed they are. So it fits very, very, very well.
But only a singular B on this occasion.
That's true. Yeah. King B, Queen B.
Yeah, King B.
Yeah, is a title I've made up. But I think finishing the season strongly is always preferable, because when a team starts well, you just talked about Bournemouth there. I don't think too many Bournemouth fans would be disappointed, but we were talking about maybe Champions League and then no European football. Brentford, my goodness, the end of the season has been in very, very good, and Mbumo's been in magnificent form. Wissa as well. They lost Ivan Toney, who was their talisman, really.
Yeah.
And the goals have been in very deep supply.
I think also they've shown a blueprint as to how you take a new stadium and turn it into a fortress.
Yes.
At home they're very good. No show in the FA Cup, lost to eventual winners Newcastle in the League Cup, but they are enjoying their best period as a club, you have to say that. They're now an established Premier League team. It feels very harsh to judge them any lower than a B, given they're kind of part of the furniture now, and at home they're just a match for anyone. Yeah,
a very exciting top half finish as well.
Yeah, totally. Brighton, Marcus. Next up, Brighton.
We've given Brighton a B+, and I think that is, again, they finished the season pretty strongly. If 8th place was going to be a European spot, which we know it's not now.
Yeah.
They were there. They were in pole position, and they were kind of the best of the rest, really.
Yeah.
You had Liverpool way out in front, Arsenal cemented second place, and then you had a lot of teams jostling for those Champions League places. And then there was another pack with Bournemouth and Fulham and Brentford and Brighton who could finish in that 8th spot in the hope it would be a Europa Conference League spot, which, of course, it won't be. Brighton finished above all those other teams in there.
Yeah.
Bournemouth have shown quality, Fulham as well, Brentford, blah, blah, blah. So the fact they've done that, and Hertzler as well, as manager, young guy, people weren't sure about him in early stages of the seasons. There was a few murmurings and so on and so forth. So I think they've just quietly gone about their business and finished the season strongly. And again, next season they'll be looking up the table.
Yeah, I think they deserve a huge amount of credit for continually reinventing themselves because they always seem to lose managers. They do regularly seem to lose players as well. Hertzler's done a great job in his first season, as you said, with some pretty big shoes to fill. He's a young guy. They also only went out of the cups, both the cups, quite narrowly. From memory, went out to one of them on penalties, Nottingham Forest.
Yeah.
So it was almost a season of nearlies for them. But again, another one of these teams that all seem to start with the letter B, who are enjoying their best period. I mean, it's incredible what they've been able to achieve. I think B+ is absolutely fair.
And we saw them get the best out of Danny Welbeck again.
There we go. Can't argue with that.
Chelsea,
we've gone with the B. I think B is a good mark for them. Enzo Maresca's done a really good job to keep that ship sailing on when many thought, including me, quite well known for thinking they would find it very chaotic and he might not be around too long. I think Champions League qualification in a competitive season around that part of the table with the youngest Premier League team since the Premier League started gives them a B. You know, I think anything above what they did, maybe you're getting into an A, but really with their recent history, their financial might, you know, more on that to come. Can't talk about that now, but that's hanging over them. They should end the season with a European trophy as well, at a canter really, but they went up against much. I think let's be honest about that. They went up against much in the Europa Conference League. So B seems about right. I don't know if you feel the same.
No, I agree. I think you summed it up well there.
Yeah, Crystal Palace is next up, Marcus. We're racing through these. Crystal Palace.
It's the first A.
It's got to be an A.
It's got
Top
to
of the
be
class.
an A.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
That trophy win, again, you would have to be a Man City fan or even... In fact, I don't even think even a Brighton fan would hold that against them.
Some of them probably would.
Yeah. Comment below. What a season. Winning that FA Cup, you just saw the scenes, that what it means to them. It's absolutely brilliant for a side to win their first major trophy ever. And they showed, Ange and Spurs, that you can prioritise a cup competition and have a decent showing in the league as well. Yeah. So they look good in the league, they finished strongly, but they suddenly captured the hearts and minds of football fans across the country, across the world, you could say, with that football they played, with Eberechi Eze producing wonderful goals and moments. But a side, a very likeable side, who are great together, knew their jobs, etc., etc. Not huge, not a huge club compared to other teams in the Premier League, but the way they've gone about their business, the way they have cemented mid-table again, whilst winning the FA Cup.
This is what we're talking about in the context of Bournemouth earlier, right?
Completely.
You can go that extra step, so you get yourself an A with us. Look, I grew up supporting Portsmouth, but I'm a South London boy these days, so I was absolutely delighted for them as well. Glasner did really well to kind of right the ship because they started really poorly at the start of the season. They finished as legends. They have finished as legends at that club.
It's immortality, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah. Everton.
Yeah, we've gone for a C- here. I mean, Moyes steadied them. They were diabolically bad in places.
I mean, they weren't scoring goals under Dyche.
No, they weren't. And a new stadium will be a fresh start for them, but it's a big bit of turmoil coming up. So they've got a lot of players out of contract. There's a rebuilds needed into that new stadium. It's their best season finish in a few years, meaning it is kind of tempting to give them perhaps a slightly better mark.
Yeah.
But I just think with their status and their history and people they've been able to attract in the years past, they've been Carlo Ancelotti's managed there, for goodness sake. Some of the players they've had.
Yeah.
I just think they're almost stuck in a rut of mediocrity.
Yeah, they are.
Now, look, they almost got relegated recently, and that would have been a disaster for them. They're not a relegation team, but neither are they at the moment, challenging in that competitive part of the table for Europe, and they probably should be. So I think C- is fair.
Getting Moyes back as well. They always say don't go back in football. This has worked. Yeah. Because he steadied the ship, as you say. And I think there's just a little bit of hope that's crept in to Everton.
I agree. I think that's probably
which is why I think C- rather than D.
If they get this rebuild right, there could be a lot of hope coming through.
Yeah.
Fulham.
I'm giving my boys a B.
Okay.
Record Premier League
points. I put
points.
B- down there, but you've changed it.
Okay. Well, we'll go
Not playing with a straight bat.
We'll go for B- then. Record Premier League points tally.
Yeah.
So that's something.
Fair.
I think people have often asked me, are you frustrated with Fulham? Because they often sort of promise to try and break into those European places. There was a little bit of hope that may be the case, and ultimately they've fallen into kind of mid-table. They finish 11th. But for a club like Fulham, maintaining mid-table Premier League status...
Losing key players as well.
Exactly. Lost Paulinho, and he hasn't been amiss, even though he was one of the best players I've ever seen in a Fulham shirt. But maintaining Premier League... mid-table status is no mean feat for a club like Fulham, or as we've mentioned, Bournemouth and one or two others as well. So, not like a brilliant season, because again, haven't done a Palace win the trophy, or done, say, Nottingham Forest getting into European places, but a solid season and a record Premier League points tally.
You can't argue with that.
You've got to be in the B's.
It does feel like a bit of a what might have been season for them, though, because there's been some silly results in there which could have made a difference, and there's an opportunity there to do what Forest have done in terms of a league position, and they missed out on that. But maintaining that level is good. I agree. They seem to be able to really kind of make big teams sweat as well, and they love a big occasion as well. So yeah, fair enough. I think they've had a good season. I don't think you're ever going to complain about it.
No, right. We've had a lot of B's. We've had a few C's. We've had an A. Ipswich Town.
D. It seems harsh.
Well, I don't know.
Relegation is relegation.
Some people might say it's not harsh enough, but some may say it's harsh. Explain yourselves.
Well, I think
explain ourselves.
After back-to-back promotions to get into the Premier League, it is hard to be overly harsh on them. But then I think they'll be disappointed to not pick up more than 22 points and not made a better go of it. As I said, relegation is relegation, but there's ways of going about things.
Sure.
They were cut adrift pretty early on, and that may be symbolic of a slightly bigger shift in English football generally, but 22 points isn't great. It feels harsh to mark them lower, because I think of the teams that have been promoted into that league, and given their context, like I say, back-to-back promotions.
Because they've not just got a lot of Championship players, they've even got a few League One players, one might argue.
Yeah, it could have been worse, but I think it could have been better.
Yeah, okay.
What about Leicester?
It's an F.
Yeah.
It is, because only Southampton really were kind of worse than them, all things considered.
Southampton took a lot of gravity in terms of criticism for being so poor.
But I mean, Leicester, a side who, there's still, fans will remember a Premier League title win. I understand a very different team and so on, but FA Cup as well. They've won 2 major trophies in recent years. They've played in the Champions League in recent years. They won the Championship, of course, playing pretty good football under Maresca. I know they changed manager. So they had some kind of guys in there with a bit more wisdom and Premier League experience, say, comparing them to Ipswich. But my goodness, were they poor.
Yeah, they were really poor.
Dearie me.
At a key part of the season as well. Going so long without scoring as much as a single goal at a key time is unforgivable.
Yeah.
It is tough for promoted teams, as we said, in the context of Ipswich. But for large parts of the season, I just thought it was diabolical. They never really got going. And I think it's only because Southampton were worse that they've received perhaps less criticism than they should. I think F is probably fair.
Got an easy one for you. Liverpool.
Yeah, Liverpool was an A, obviously.
A plus, you could even say.
The only thing that stopped me or us giving them an A plus is that they came out on the wrong side of the PSG fixture.
Yep.
They were flat in the League Cup final. They were knocked out after a bad day at the office against Plymouth in the FA Cup. I think if they won one of any of those other trophies, it would have been an A plus, because the season promised so much. True. But they still deserve an A for winning the league.
They weren't pushed in the league that much as well, but that's not their fault. But maybe this is why we're not giving them an A plus.
I think they also deserve an A for the fact that Slot's come in this first season and done so well. So I think it's an A. I think
Slot, that's one of the best debut seasons we've ever seen from a Premier League manager.
But I think A plus is something truly exceptional.
Yeah.
And I think not winning one other trophy is what stopped it from being an A plus. But nonetheless, best team in the country, deserved to win the league easily. Really, really good. Excited to see what they do next. I think an A is fair.
Yes.
Next one, tricky one. This is probably the first tricky one. Manchester City.
We've gone for a C.
Yeah.
Only because they finished the season strongly. They had an unbelievable wobble.
Yeah.
And for a period of the season, they just looked like a different team. And we just thought, is it done? I wondered if he'd be off at the end of the season. Can they get this back? Will they be playing in European football? Will they be playing in the Conference League or maybe the Europa League? The fact is, they're back in the Champions League. They finished the season strongly. Not a great season. You're off the back of 4 Premier League title wins. I understand at some point you're not going to win a Premier League title win between now and eternity.
Yeah. Lost the cup final as well, though.
But they lost the cup final. So I think if you won the cup final, maybe we'd have given them a C+ or maybe even a B, dare I say. So it is ultimately a disappointing season because Pep said even if they'd have won the FA Cup, he said, this is just not good enough for us. So not good enough all round, but we give them credit for rescuing it, despite, some big injuries. I mean, Rodri being the obvious one, but even Haaland was injured for a bit of the run-in as well. So a C for Manchester City.
And I think the way you justify the C is you say, Champions League qualification has saved their season, but with their budget and talent, that's a minimum requirement.
Yeah.
And I think C is a minimum requirement grade. You can't give them any higher than that, but I think given that they rescued it, it's hard to give them worse than that, I would say.
An easier one for you. Manchester United.
It's another F, I'm afraid. Unforgivably poor, despite reaching a European final. At points, it was pretty hard to believe how bad they were, given their status, their budget, the people they've got at the club. The points total means it's entirely impossible to give them higher than an F. I don't see how you can justify that.
Yeah.
And I said that it's in some parts it was hard to believe how bad they were. It's hard to see how they get worse, but weirdly enough, I think there's a chance it might get worse before it gets better. Nevertheless, it's an easy grade to give them. You've got to give them an F. I mean, you can't give them any higher.
I can't push back at that on that at all.
Newcastle United.
B+.
Yeah.
Close to an A. Because they won a trophy, for crying out loud. So you can't argue with that. Just sneaked into the Champions League spots. So credit for them not dropping off after the League Cup. They knew there was football to be played.
Yeah.
But I just think for Newcastle, from what we're going to come to expect a bit more from what we've seen, I think a B+ if we're being brutal as we have to be, rather than A. A great season all round though for them.
I think they're on the cusp of an A.
But they
the
are.
B+ is a very good grade.
I
mean, Crystal Palace have won a bigger trophy than them, but in the FA Cup. Yes. Liverpool have won the league. They're the only 2 teams. Spoiler alert. They're the only 2 teams that are going to get an A. I think if they had cantered to a Champions League qualification and looked solid, I think you'd probably give them an A.
Yeah.
I think that, as it turns out, things could have been very different. The final day they could have missed out.
Well, a refereeing decision has helped them, really.
And if they had missed out on Champions League, you ain't giving them anywhere near a B+, given their ambitions and what they've done. So I think B+ is a very, very good mark. Don't get upset that you've not got an A. A B+ is very good.
But if you are upset, comments below.
Yeah.
Nottingham Forest.
Well, I wanted to give them an A. You have convinced me to knock them down to a B+, and you can justify why you've done that in a minute.
Okay.
To all the Forest fans watching this, I wanted to give them an A because European qualification, where most people were predicting relegation, is such an overachievement. I think they've more than doubled their points tally from last season. But the thing is, I suppose, that they have come up short from how they adjusted their ambitions throughout the season. And their methods were kind of found out. That the way they were playing, the way they were getting results, that kind of petered away quite badly. And I think to come 7th, I think is tinged slightly with disappointment. Nevertheless, I still would have given them an A because it's unthinkable. I mean, we just did our predictions on the show, on the podcast this week, and I think everyone, if not everyone, predicted them to be relegated. I think I was the only one who didn't predict them to be relegated, and I thought they'd go close. So to get where they got to is brilliant. B+, as I've just said about Newcastle, is a very good grade, Marcus.
Very good grade, yeah. The reason why I think it's a B+ is because you take the season going into what's the expectation, but then you also amend that with as the expectations go throughout the season. How did it finish up? Forest were talking Champions League for a while, or a lot of people were about them. It was there for the taking.
They were unquestionably targeting that.
Yeah, of course.
They were.
It was there for the taking. Dropping points at home, most notably to Leicester, and then losing to Chelsea on the final day. It's harsh, but to not even get Europa League, to finish in Europa Conference League,
those are the margins.
You've knocked down 2 competitions there. I think it's had an incredible season. There's no doubt about that. All the best for them to next season, and they'll be among the favourites, if not the favourite for the Conference League, and it'd be great if they could win that next season. But to not finish in the Champions League spots, having been there or thereabouts for so long, that's what knocks them down to a B+.
If they got into the Europa League, would you have given them an A?
We'll never know. we'll never know. Nice easy one for you, Southampton.
F.
No further questions.
Next. Just
No, save the Southampton fans.
You know why it's an F. I mean, come on. You know why it's a fucking F.
Go on then. Who have we got next?
Spurs. Oh, it's tough ones for you. I think I can justify this one pretty easily.
I think this is the trickiest one. We've gone for it. We've gone for a C.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why we've gone for a C. Europa League triumph is an A. League position is an F.
Yeah.
So you just land in the middle. C minus, C. We're giving them a C. I think C's are fairer than they probably deserve.
I mean, just so bad in the league. 17th.
Astonishingly sloppy and naive in the league for the majority of the season. I saw them at Craven Cottage. I was with a mutual friend of ours, Lee, and I said, and he'd not seen him this season, and I'd seen him a few times by then, and I said to him, you watch this Spurs team. They're the sloppiest team you will ever see in the Premier League at this level. And they were really, really poor.
And also, the idea of prioritising the Europa League, that's totally fine.
Yeah.
Because teams prioritise the cups, but not so...
They behaved like the Premier League didn't even exist.
Exactly, yeah. Not so disrespectfully to the people who have paid money to see that team.
Probably one of the strangest seasons you can imagine a team having. Like, it's hard to think of a different one.
Yeah.
We should end on a positive note, though, by saying to them, winning a European trophy for the first time in 40-odd years, lifting the Europa League, which is a major trophy, amazing scenes for some of those players, particularly Son, who was desperate to win one, or any kind of trophy, really. We have to end this little picture on a positive one and say, congratulations to win the Europa League.
Yeah, because C's not a terrible mark.
But I mean, I'm not saying it undermines it, but it was so weird in the Premier League. I mean, it was like they were gaslighting the whole football community
so as you
by
say,
pretending the league didn't even exist.
Yeah,
so a C.
Would have been an F, but those scenes of celebrations in North London after that Europa League victory mean it's a C.
I mean, the margins are so fine. Like, if they'd lost a final, you probably still would have given them an F. Do you know what I mean? So anyway,
West Ham.
We've gone for a D. They've spent a bit. They still remain totally incoherent. Best hope is a full pre-season with Graham Potter. I think I've not gone harder on them this season because I do think, you bring someone like Graham Potter in mid-season, you need to kind of keep your powder dry and see what he can do. Yeah. They need a bit of a cleanse. He's clearly been using the second half of the season to have a look at players. I think a D is fair because they are a big club. They deserve. They should be doing better.
Yeah.
So it's hard to give them more than a D. They've been inconsistent overall since being back in the Premier League. They've been able to get quite far up there at points, but they've also looked like really poor at points as well. This season's been tough. It's always tough when you lose your manager. That tells its own story. You can't say it's been a good season if you had to fire your manager for poor performances.
Absolutely, yeah.
So I think a D's about right.
Because they've not convinced under Potter, but...
Not yet. But I think you've got to give him time.
Yeah. He's saved an E maybe through being given time.
So to speak.
Indeed. And
Wolves,
the last club.
Wolves next.
Yeah, we're giving them a D as well.
Last but no means least, a D.
I mean, started terribly. Poor old Gary O'Neill.
Wanted him to do well.
Yeah, we did. It seems an age ago that he was in charge of Wolves, but they were on for relegation. Now, as it would turn out, the three teams who did get relegated were really, really poor.
They kind of answered that question quite early on, though, didn't they?
But they did, and they played their part in getting out of relegation. And actually, under Vitor Pereira, got some pretty good wins, some good results, scored some nice goals. So ended the season on a much better note. And Pereira with his first the points, then the pints mentality, and
that gives him an extra grade for sure.
Absolutely right, yeah. So I think he's endeared himself to some of the Wolves fans. And again, going into next season, I think there's more hope than dread.
Yeah, I think it's interesting enough. It's their worst finish since they've been back in the Premier League. It's hard to mark them high. Just on Pereira's stint, you'd give him a better mark, but it's about the whole season. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens next season, particularly if they lose Mateus Cunha. He's been really important for them. He looks like he probably will go. But
they're getting performances from more Strand Larsen and so on.
They are, and Pereira have a full pre-season, right?
Yeah.
I suspect he might do pretty well. So, but we're not talking about next season. We're talking about this season. It's a D.
It's a D. There we are. You might find that harsh. You might find that generous. Get your comments in below.